Good morning and welcome back to this edition of ACM Live. We are joined by a group of individuals who are going to demystify this e-commerce conversation that is so needed right now. And today I'm going to introduce, that's just going to bring them into the fold one time because I know everybody is time crunched during these, working from home remote situation. We're going to get right to it. So first I'm going to introduce Christopher Burns. He is the CEO of FAC, First Atlantic Commerce, and he will share with you his role at First Atlantic Commerce. Chris, you want to take it away?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Great. Tell us what you do at FAC for those who may not know.
Yeah, so from my perspective, I'm the CEO of FAC, as you mentioned. And my job is predominantly to basically form this direction of and about that now. At FAC Prime now, so I have different roles within the organization. So I started outside and sort of worked my way through that part of the organization and took over CEO 7 years now. So my primary job is to really work with our partners and put in place our overall strategy for connecting all the different e-commerce clients within the region and making sure that our organization to provide all the different products and services that are required within the e-commerce markets.
You're having a bit of an audio issue there.
Yeah.
So while you work on that, what I'll do is I'll introduce our guest of honor because Chris and I have been doing this so many times. This is just so normal. But we have someone new today, live and direct from one of the offices of Republic Bank. Kwame, can you introduce yourself, who you are, where you work, and what is your portfolio?
Sure. Thank you. And welcome. My name is Blanchfield. I too am getting a new connection here.
Today, technology.
Yeah. But my role is as senior manager of group marketing and communications at Republic Bank. I'm in charge of rolling out to the entire group our range of products and services, both on the retail, corporate, and commercial side. And we also look at our subsidiaries in Ghana and our newly acquired territories in the Eastern Caribbean. So from an overall perspective, I'm in charge of marketing, branding, product strategy, communications, and even payments as well. So it's timely we are having this conversation and we are glad to be part of it.
Wow, that is a lot. That is a mouthful, and I think there are a lot of memes going around that COVID-19 has been the biggest digital transformation conversation ever, and it's unfortunate what would have happened to quite a lot of folks in terms of trying to just get by day to day. But as it relates to a business and getting access to your customers, e-commerce is ultimately where we have to be in order to survive. And I want to ask Chris, because Chris, can you unmute yourself? I think I've fixed the echo situation here. We're good to go. Great.
Yeah, that sounds much better.
And I mean, I've been working with Chris for a little bit close to a year now, and when I initially started the conversation with him, it's kind of confusing as it comes to e-commerce. What does that actually mean? Because Amazon has been the top visited site in the Caribbean for the last 10 years. I've been doing this for 10 years and it's always there, right? Which means that people have a general understanding of what e-commerce is as a consumer. But from a business owner perspective, now having to shift to doing it on your back end, can you share with people who may not understand what your service does, what it actually is FAC's plugging?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So you're right, and e-commerce is really a sort of all-encompassing term. And as far as FAC is concerned, we narrow down on a very specific part of the e-commerce industry. So our job as FAC is to provide connectivity between your website and ultimately the financial institutions and card networks, so Visa, MasterCard, Amex, Discover, to be able to accept credit card payments via your website. So we provide a technical front end, which I won't go into too much detail now, but it makes it a very simple integration point to be able to connect your website to our gateway platform, which we call Payment Gateway. And then we, on the back end of our gateway, connect directly into the different banks and Republic Bank to provide that real-time authorization of the credit card that's being entered into your website. And then once it hits Republic Bank, on the back end there, it's going to really route itself through Visa or MasterCard network into the bank that actually issued that credit card that's being used on your site for an approval and to capture the funds, and then ultimately have those funds deposited to your merchant account with Republic Bank. So it is a very vast network, and it's very complex on the back end. So we endeavor to make sure that we can provide a very simple access to that once your e-commerce merchant account is approved by Republic Bank, for example.
Went on mute there. So for those who may not fully understand what Christopher would have mentioned there, what Chris would have mentioned, you can follow the FAC LinkedIn page and Facebook page. And what we do is we create regular blogs that, expand what he just said there, because a lot of the times it's a transition, right? For those who may not, this is new to them, because later down in this session, we're going to talk to folks who already have their merchant ID and still trying to figure out certain things. So for Kwame, as it relates to Republic Bank, let's say, for instance, I do have a point of sale. I, have a store, let's say in a mall, and now I have to transition. And I am a Republic Bank customer. What would be my next step?
Sure. So once you decide that you want to move on to e-commerce, first you need to have at least a website. But now there are solutions where you don't need to have a website. But let's just assume that you do have products and services that you want to sell, and you want to move from selling in your point of sale in your brick and mortar. You can extend your services online by having obviously a website where you can list your products and services, and on that website you will accept credit card payments. Some of the challenges, however, for adoption of credit cards and e-commerce has been the technical setup and the website integration and the cost around hosting a website, particularly if there's not enough e-commerce traffic coming to your e-commerce website. So there have been solutions by other fintechs and partnering with FAC where you don't need to have a website. All you can do is invoice. So it's almost like an invoicing platform where you can send a WhatsApp to someone indicating this is the invoice, and they will pay via a link that is sent, and it's on the back end. It connects with FAC. So what that does, it removes all of the technical integration on the front end. So there are options for persons right now who want to migrate from a typical brick and mortar onto an e-commerce platform or online presence. And there are the traditional solutions where you can have your website and you can list all your products and services with your shopping cart and your return policy, your refund policy, etc. And then there's the solution where you might be a smaller business, a cottage industry, almost a mom and pop shop, a very micro business, and you just want to get payments. And you have a customer who wants to pay online, you can do your invoicing platform. So there are options now for different companies who want to engage in online payments.
Great. And for Christopher, I keep calling you Christopher. I don't understand why, although you told me to call you Chris. It's just, I don't know. I see Chris, I see Christopher.
Absolutely fine. I answered about.
I'm balancing multiple screens too, right? So it's just like, okay, I just want to make sure everybody's hearing properly. All right. So we have some insight from Republic Bank, and that's a good point, Kwame, about the mom and pop, because everybody have different needs. You fall into a different category. And this is one of my pet peeves as well as a consumer, where I want to have at least the option, because not everybody, there's also a concern, and Chris, I'm going to come to you on that as well. There's a concern about security when it comes to e-commerce, right? And I'm going to step ahead a bit before we come back, which is, what can you do, Chris, to alleviate those concerns? Because there is this shift of, that physicality of handing money. It is cultural to us as well in the Caribbean, where we tend to feel more confident in having those blues in our hand. So what suggestion would you have, or alleviate that fear as a business owner to say, okay, yes, this shift is necessary. Yes, you should be concerned about cybersecurity, but these are the things that you should do to basically secure that adoption for online payments.
Yeah, thank you. And just to go on to the back end of what Kwame was saying as well. So yeah, we definitely have these solutions now where you can send e-invoices and what we call active invoices that have payment buttons in them, or you can send the payment buttons via WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. You can have them on your Instagram account now as well. So that is a great solution for smaller merchants. And what we've also done is created a lot of plugins for different shopping carts. So via our partners like WebGold and Quovis, who have created plugins for Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, 3D Card. On the big end of the scale, we have connections into Sabre now, which is a very large sort of ticketing system for airlines and hotels. So there are a lot more options out there now, and we've got more coming, which we'll be able to unveil sort of hopefully later this year. And that's really the purpose of that is to make it as easy as possible to get online without having to spend lots of money on websites and software developers but it ranges. So we can certainly service sort of the micro and sort of SME type merchants, and then we can service the larger ones as well. But going on to your point about security, that is a very big part of it. And you're right, culturally, we have not necessarily sort of trusted online, or we have preferred to have cash. I've seen that in certain countries we go to, where there will be the ability to either pay online or walk into a store and give your card. But I've seen individuals go to a cash point, ATM, take out cash, walk across the road, and use cash to pay somewhere that they could have paid by card. So you're right, and and certain companies we work with, they do payouts, and people want checks. They want to have that physical check in their hand where they could have had that money deposited directly into their bank account. So it is a cultural thing. It's a generational thing as well. We have the same thing here in Bermuda, where going to the bank is a day out. People they want to go and stand in line. They see their friends. They chat about what's going on during the day. So there are different aspects of that you have to contend with. But if you're looking at the security point of it, you really need to be making sure that you're working with reputable vendors within the payment space. So for example, at the gateway level, we have to do something called PCI DSS level 1 certification every year, which is where we hire a third-party company that basically comes and tries to break our systems, looks to see if we have any card data in clear text anywhere, looks at our policies and procedures, and it takes about 3 months to get through. So it's a very significant part of what we do as an organization. So if you are looking to work with a gateway, make sure they're PCI certified, which is different to being PCI compliant. It's a much deeper audit of their technical infrastructure. And then also make sure that you're working with an acquirer that has been in that space for a while as well. So somebody like Republic Bank, who understands, and we worked very closely with to help launch the overall e-commerce program with Republic. And as FAC is concerned, we've been PCI DSS level 1 certified since 2005. So from a merchant perspective, if you're looking to buy on a particular website, look to make sure that they're They have their SSL certificates in it. So if you go up to the address bar, the URL bar, and there should be a padlock there. You can view, if you click on that padlock, should give you the information that matches that certificate belongs to that particular merchant. And look where they're based, and what their policies and procedures are. Look at what their terms and conditions are. Look at the refunds. If it's too good to be true, usually is. If they're selling Rolex watches for $100, then it's the sort of website that you really shouldn't be purchasing on. So there's lots of things you can do to be safe there, and also from a merchant perspective, again, make sure you're using vendors that really understand the space, not just somebody that, I say this all the time, that thinks they know something about computers. When you're dealing with your online business and you're dealing with credit card data, that is very sensitive data, and if you lose that data, the fines are significant, and it can really damage your overall business. But on the plus side, being able to open your business 365 days a year and sell to the world, the benefits are far outweigh the risks.
So there are quite a few things that I want to follow up with on what you said there. And I see a question in the comments, Mael. I hope I pronounced that correctly. I have you. Don't worry, I got you. We will have a Q&A in the last 15 minutes. So I want to direct a question to Kwame because just stepping back a bit, we think corporate accounts, because we've been using the merchant account, merchant ID terminology, and for those who may not know, and I only learned of this recently, that there is a difference, because as a small business owner, I have a corporate account, but word on the street is they're not the same. So can you share with folks out there what a merchant account is and why you need a merchant ID?
Sure. So a merchant account really is to facilitate, in this case, point of sale transactions. And well, what we are speaking of e-commerce will be for e-commerce transactions. So we are basically able to give a number or some kind of association to this merchant, so you identify this merchant in the overall e-commerce communication trail. There is an authorization stream that goes to Visa and MasterCard for approval to the card networks, and part of that includes the merchant ID. So even in your current point of sale scenario, where your receipt is printed, you will see, for example, merchant ID. There is the equivalent on e-commerce. So you need a merchant account. Basically, that is an account where all of your funds or all of the proceeds from online sales will be credited. It could be your existing commercial account, right? But generally, we set up a merchant account, which will include your merchant ID, your merchant name, and your commercial account, which could be an existing account you have with the bank or a new one to take your deposits from your online sales. So that's what we call the merchant account generally.
Hey, I just trying to multitask here. Thanks for that.
Sure.
So the next, I want to talk about the trends, because we spoke about this idea of cash, and I have an example at said bank. I had to arrange some stuff during the lockdown for my loan, and I made some arrangements, and I was talking to the individual outside of the bank, and someone came and said, "Oh my gosh, you guys are closed." And he was like, "Okay, yeah," but he was trying to help, and he said, "What do you need?" And she's like, "Well, I need to make a deposit." And he said, "Well, the ATM is available." And she said, "You can use the ATM for deposits." And that was just, to me, that was just I stood
Yeah.
up in awe, And I want to talk about trends where that is concerned, right? Because we're going to have a shift. We just for survival. One of my favorite furniture stores, they use Facebook a lot, and they are actually new customer of yours, Chris. I saw their new website, and even then you see people asking questions about the cost when the post clearly states that the cost is there. So from the back end perspective, let's go back to Chris. In terms of the trends, what are you seeing now with the transition for the pandemic for companies?
Yeah, and there's definitely been some shifts there, and it's interesting you say that about your furniture store, and I noticed that just after sort of all the lockdowns were being put in place, or just before actually, where people were complaining that that telco companies, for example, weren't doing enough to tell people how to pay online. So I went to their website just to see what the information was, and clearly on the front page was how to pay your bill online. So we as consumers sometimes are maybe a little lazy in terms of how we find out the information, and that's just because we're having so many things spoon fed to us in terms of 130 character bytes. We go on there, but from a trend perspective, it was really when lockdown happened, it was a mad scramble. So we already had a number of clients that were online, but suddenly businesses were faced with like, okay, well how do I what's our business continuity plan? How do I keep going? How do I sell our goods and services? How do I take payments for everything that we do? So we saw a very big shift in retail, being able to do delivery, so get paid, set up a proper website, put the products online, be able to take payment in real time, not do bank transfers or take checks, or it was actual real-time credit card transaction processing through their website, and then setting up different models in terms of delivery, in terms of how do we do that safely, click and collect, which is sort of ordering online and then being able to sort of drive up. So a lot of supermarkets and bigger retailers sort of employed that, where you can just simply place your order online, pay, and then go through a drive-through type model and have your groceries put in the back of your car, for example. So we've seen a big trend in that. Food delivery companies in general. So you will have seen that certainly, one of our customers in Trinidad, in terms of Drop, been hugely successful there. Chef Made is doing, slightly different because they're doing, actually sort of, self-made healthy meals. Anybody that's creating some sort of, telco or utility, is certainly, governments are moving all their ability to pay for government services online now as well. And, I think what we're seeing after this sort of initial frenzy is more of the sort of strategic approach now in terms of, okay, what do we do now in case we have to go back to lockdown? We're going to go into the fall season. We're going to go into the the normal cold and flu season. What's going to happen then? Because people may just generally have a cold or the flu, or they might not have coronavirus, but there will be some panic around that because people won't know who has what. So all businesses now need to be able to transition seamlessly to that sort of lockdown type scenario, because people have been, consumers have been patient in this first wave because this was obviously unforeseen and we had no idea what this was going to be, but they will gravitate naturally to businesses that are prepared if we have to go into that scenario again. And now, talk about the cultural break. Now that people have been forced into online, and some people sort of kicking and screaming into that scenario, they realize, how convenient it is, how easy it is, how secure it's been. And we expect to see that trend continue even if we don't go into a lockdown type scenario. The influx of new clients that we've had over the last 5 or 6 months is been record breaking from our perspective, and we fully expect that to continue even without any sort of threat of COVID, just because of the experience that people have had now, and they realize this is a good way to start their business, grow their business, and to be able to get hold of goods and services, not just internationally from Amazon, as you mentioned, but there are some fantastic companies providing some really great products and services all through the Caribbean.
So, for those who are watching us live, we will be taking your questions in the last 15 minutes of this session. And what I want to ask Kwame is relating to the back end, because you would have visibility and knowledge on mistakes. And I feel like we all need to learn from mistakes, because with the adoption of e-commerce and putting online as an add-on to your business environment, I'm sure there are a lot of lessons to be learned. And I would love for you to share with those folks out there who may be considering it, maybe already started the process. What would be your advice, or the top 3 things that they should avoid?
Sure. E-commerce is not the silver bullet. There is the perception that e-commerce is the panacea, that if you have low sales, low revenue, soon as you go online, your sales and profits are going to double increase. That's not the case. If you are weak in the traditional marketing sense, your products are not competitive, they lack quality, and you are not leveraging any kind of marketing right now, chances are if you go directly to e-commerce, no one will know of your product and service. So you need to make sure that there is an awareness and that there is an appetite for your product. E-commerce does not mean you still ignore the traditional rules and general best practices around marketing and product development. The more people know about your product, the better. So that's number one, in terms of e-commerce being the solution and the silver bullet. Number two, keep pivoting as we see now with the new normal, as this is a new jargon as well. Meaning, there are different models for e-commerce, as Chris just mentioned. There could be the online and you pick up at store. There could be the delivery. There could be various fulfillments. And what I have found is that some companies have stuck in this particular model where, because they can't do the actual fulfillment, they don't believe e-commerce is for them. So there are some companies who right now are ripe for e-commerce, but they do a part of it, but they don't do the other part of it. So for example, there are some companies in Trinidad, and I know one in particular, that you can order your food online, but you can't pay online. So then what I saw one day was, when I went there for food, for my lunch, I saw the staff members calling customers who did not as yet come for their lunches, and there were like 20 lunches piled up, this telephone order. So I spoke to the proprietor, who is a merchant customer of the bank with their point of sale, and I said to him, if you had persons pay online or pay through an app, you would not have been using your telephone to call customers. You would not have been engaging staff's time to call customers. They could have been doing something else. Your food would have already been paid for. The reason why they are calling these customers, it's because it's a loss. These foods have already been packaged and not collected, and the customers have not come as yet. But if you were able to collect that payment online when the customer collected, and you would then your risk would be minimized, and chances are the persons will come for will have a credit card, because more times than not, persons pay with a credit card at this particular establishment. So that's number two, in terms of looking at your business and understanding the particular model. I may be ripe for e-commerce, but my own perception of e-commerce is limiting me. Right? I'm thinking that I actually have to do fulfillment, that I need to have some kind of inland delivery for e-commerce. That's not necessarily the case. And number three, keep aware and keep abreast of customers' changing needs, patterns, behaviors, preferences, and attitudes. It's a very fickle customer bunch we have today, right? What is in fashion today may not be in fashion tomorrow. And so various payment options, customers value convenience. And so e-commerce is a convenience package for customers now, much more than ever, given the whole social distancing and pandemic. And we have seen, despite the pandemic, before the pandemic, we had made valiant attempts to increase our online banking penetration, but to little avail. We did get some increase, but not as incremental as we would like. But with the pandemic, persons coming through our door signing up for online banking, almost a 20-25 increase in applications month over month. So sometimes you really need a shot in the arm. You need a kind of a fillip to get you going. And COVID has done that. So companies need to make sure that they don't lose sight of any opportunities that present themselves right now, because there are persons who have shifted to online delivery, curbside pickup, and that is now forming a big part of their revenue because of their in-dining part of their restaurant is now closed. So persons now would be able to feel comfortable paying from home, and all I have to do is go and pick up. Little or no interactions with persons. So those would be my three things. It's not a silver bullet, so keep marketing yourself and the company. Look at how you pivot, and generally keep your mind open around customer value and convenience.
I really felt attacked when you say customers are fickle. I was just like, why is he talking to me?
I
But
am as well. I am as well. I am a customer and I am fickle as well, and
it's
that.
interesting that we have so many cards in our purse right now. Like when my purse, but growing up as a kid and seeing my mother with so many cards in the purse, I was like, why would anybody need that? And you saying that really brings to the table that we choose at that point in time with whatever situation you're going through. Maybe your car, you don't want to touch the interest. Maybe you want to use cash or so forth. And to hear you say that really puts it in perspective. Customers are fickle.
Yeah, yeah, and it's where we want to get the value, right? As I keep saying, I will use credit over debit and cash any because credit rewards you. You get miles or cashback or points or whatever, right? And debit doesn't. So it all depends on the person and cash. But one of the reasons that there may be a low adoption, and I'm not too sure if this year going with Trinidad as well for e-commerce, is our debit card generally is not designed for e-commerce, and that is changing. So we may see a higher level of adoption of e-commerce, and more companies as well engaging in e-commerce, because there are some companies right now in Trinidad engaging in successful e-commerce transactions, and FAC and us knows them, of course, because they're on our platforms. So it is there and it's moving, but we need to get more of it going in Trinidad. And once I believe government services come online, and persons are able to pay, for example, their passport renewal, their driver's permit renewal, and they are able to do that with their debit cards, that will facilitate a lot of the e-commerce, because e-commerce right now is mainly on credit cards and primarily outside of Trinidad. Not many domestic e-commerce as a percentage of the e-commerce happening outside of Trinidad.
So did you just give us an exclusive there? Because are we gonna get debits online soon?
Well, in fact, it's no secret. All of the banks are moving towards an international Visa debit card, uh,
Yes.
right? What I can say is that each bank will have their own policy with respect to international e-commerce or card not present, but domestic e-commerce, Trinidad and Tobago, where you can shop online for in a local store at your home, that is being promoted, and each bank is at its different stage of rolling out. So I know two other issuers who have already issued their cards, and we are in the process of doing the final little bit of tweaks on our cards. But I do have a pilot card that I am using, and it will be chip and contactless enabled when that contactless feature becomes available in the market.
Well, if it was appropriate, I would be dancing right now. But I mean,
Yeah. So
that's amazing. That's good news.
yeah. So it's hope that will help in the penetration and the adoption of e-commerce and domestic online payments, as government is moving to try to have more of their services online, obviously for cost and efficiency and value to consumers.
Okay. Shout out to the folks who are joining us live, Marcello and Dr. Hayes. They just say hi, everyone. So we're going to step back a bit because let's say someone's watching this, they were on the fence to adopt e commerce. They're a Republic Bank customer. They heard about it. They're like, this is not for me. But now they're forced to explore e-commerce. Where do they begin? Where does the journey start? Does it start with Kwame or does it start with Chris?
Do you want me to answer that?
Chris, you can take a stab, but then I will go after.
Yeah, so I mean, and I think that's a great question because it leads on to, just following what Kwame was saying, was on the mistake side, and I say this all the time, is that you really do need to think payments first when it comes to getting your online presence sorted out. If you are indeed looking to take payments for your products or services, because the issue being is that not all platforms are connected to payment platforms that service the Caribbean. So there are platforms like Wix and Squarespace and Ecommerce and ones like that don't have any connectivity with companies like ours or any of the banks within the Caribbean. So you can go out and spend all this time, money, and energy creating a great looking website on that, and it could all be for nothing because those platforms are only connected to payment gateways that only connect to US banks, for example, or European banks. So that's a really big one, and a mistake that we've seen a lot over the years. So every time that we're doing sessions like this or we're speaking to partners, is just make sure that what you're selecting is connected technically from a payments perspective within the Caribbean. And then as a starting point, we always promote ourselves as a business that yes, we're a software company, yes, we're in the payment space, but we have been in this space for 2 decades now. So we know all the different points that you need to consider and all the different partners that you might need to consider within the e-commerce space. So we are here to help. We're always a good starting point in terms of if you don't know a website developer or which platforms to choose or anything about payments online in general. The team here is put together to help provide that customer service. But also a very important part of that process, if not the most important part, is with Republic Bank and applying for your e-commerce merchant account, which as you pointed out is different from a corporate account, is different from a personal account. And is a very important step, and usually the first step before us, before engaging our services, is to make sure that you deal with Public Bank first, to make sure that they're going to approve your merchant account.
Kwame, you wanna?
Yes, correct. So you are interested in e-commerce. You're not too sure exactly what flavor of e-commerce. Do you have a website, and what does it look like? What is this payment card, etc.? So even if customers are not fully comfortable or conversant with what they need, we try to help them. So as I said, if all you want is payment, and there are 2 customers who you regularly provide services to, and they want to pay you, and they know the exact amount you have provided them with the invoice, then you can just do our online invoicing payment option. There's no need to develop an elaborate website. However, if you believe your offering is a bit more complex than that, you have a range of products and services and solutions you want to provide, and in fact your company right now is regional and you want to expand some more, you can develop a website. We will provide you with names of approved web developers who have been certified with FAC and ourselves, for example, Web Gold, and you can work with Web Gold to develop a website of your liking. They will become your webmaster, and then now you will host your website. They will host your website. There will be fees associated with that, and they will then integrate your website on the back end with FAC, and there will be testing, etc. So a website will require a lot more development. It has to have some best practices that conform to the internet, or at least the e-commerce best practices, such as a refund policy or shipping policy, right? There's a shipping cart etc., so that you know exactly what you're offering the customers, and customers who are coming to your site know exactly what they are entitled to and what redress they have with respect to any cancelled goods, goods not received, etc. Because what you want to do is to help increase confidence in the e-commerce ecosystem. And by you doing that, you help boost that confidence as well. So that's what we will do, have a general conversation with you to understand what your needs are. In many cases, some customers have a website. They just need some reconfiguration, for example, a payment page, perhaps better description of their products and services, more up-to-date pictures, include a shopping cart, include a refund policy, a shipping policy, but they have some pages already. Some customers, their website is a web directory. It definitely cannot be amended in its current format. It needs a total overhaul to convince customers that, to keep coming back as a real good e-commerce website. And then there are some customers, all they need is just, I keep doing business with Chris every month. I don't want Chris leave his office or write a check or do a wire transfer or ACH. Here, Chris, here's my WhatsApp link or my Facebook link or my Instagram link. Pay me on these mediums immediately. And in that way, you get your payment credited to your account. So those were the avenues that are available to customers. Those are the avenues. And once we settle on one, we then engage FAC very quickly on the back end. So as you can see, it's a close parallel relationship between the bank and FAC in getting a customer up as an e-commerce merchant.
So what are the documents required as a business owner for you to start this process? Because I know FirstAtlanticCommerce.com would have a form where you can fill out. It includes a merchant ID, which would, I assume, start from the Republic Bank customer side. So going back to Kwame on the documents, what are you required to open that merchant ID?
Right. So basically, in the case where you have your company name that is registered, etc., you bring that into us and we will open that merchant ID. So you will need 2 forms of ID, your normal standard KYC, 2 forms of ID, proof of address, right? Either utility bill. If you're self-employed and it's your own company and your own business, we need to see your financials or projections. If it's a new company, we want to see projections. And we will then open the account there for you. We will, for example, need to see your directors. So it depends on the company. If it's a limited liability, if it's sole trader, the documents differ somewhat. Where a more established company, we want to see the full range of documents, the articles of association, directors, and all of the forms to be signed, apart from the IDs of all of these directors. And it's not so much the bank being problematic. It's because really to have proper oversight of who the directors are, and it's a central bank requirement as well. A sole trader, almost trading as, that's a bit different, and we can set up those companies under the sole trader type of arrangement, where they will just need to provide us with the name of the company and their own personal information, and we set up these companies as quickly as we can.
So you have your merchant ID and you head over to FirstAtlanticCommerce.com. Chris, what's next? What's the next step as a business owner?
So once we have all that information, the next step for us is really to work with the client to share our integration documentation and work with them in terms of how they technically integrate to our platform. So we have a support team here, and usually before we start any sort of work in earnest there, we have what's called an integration call. So we will have people on our support team, somebody from our business development team, and then we ask that the client has somebody from their technical team and somebody from their business team to have that initial conversation, just to make sure that we're mapping out which products and services are needed, which ones aren't, which parts of the documentation to look at properly, make sure that 3D Secure is enabled, which is the verified by Visa, MasterCard secure code, which is a useful anti-fraud tool. And then answer any questions that have come up from their initial review of the technical documentation. And then at that point, we will work with the client to, answer any questions they might have once they've started the integration, work through a whole sort of testing scenario with them in terms of different transaction types, make sure all that is working. And then at that point, once we can see all of that is in play, we'll do a sort of website review on our side, just based on the best practices from Visa and MasterCard. And then we will issue sort of what we call production account details, which is at a point where the merchant is ready to start live transactions. And then simply sort of hand back to the client and to the bank and say, okay, as far as FAC is concerned, the client's done everything they need to do, and they're ready to start accepting transactions online.
Great. I think that was extremely insightful. This is the part where we get into questions from the audience. I have one. Ethan, I'm coming to you just now. We're going to start with Mael. She wants to know, and this would be for Chris, when would a plugin for Squarespace be available? And I think this is extremely important for those who may have missed earlier on, where he referenced, you have to make sure and do your due diligence on the platform that you're building your website to make sure that it does coincide and it's applicable to the plugins that are available in the Caribbean, because there's so many options out there, but they're not necessarily feasible for the Caribbean. So Chris, take it away.
Yeah, so I would love to give you an exact date on Squarespace. So we have some of the major platforms already on and we're working on a couple of other big ones right now. Squarespace is not top of that list right now for us. It's a great platform. We don't actually get a lot of requests for Squarespace. It's usually some of the other ones. So I can't give you an exact date right now. But if there is a partner out there that wants to work with us in terms of developing a Squarespace plugin, then we'd be more than happy to work with them and make that available within the Caribbean.
I feel like we're getting a lot of first out here exclusive sessions between the debit cards and working with people to get plugins. Guys, I hope you're listening to this. We can change. All right. So the next question, I'm going to send this across to Kwame, and it is about the reversal. This is Ethan Smart asking, how is the reversal of the transaction performed manually if a customer requests a refund?
That may be, I don't want to give any errant information, and that normally will be best answered by persons who deal with the dispute resolution area of the credit card, which is chargebacks. But if I want to read the question literally, how is the reversal of the transaction performed manually if a customer requests a refund? So I'm not aware that it can be performed manually. It's not like a point of sale machine. I'm not too sure, Chris, if you can jump in there, but on the back end, it will require us actually getting that code back in. And I know there's something we do on the edit package coming from Visa as well. We can take a look at reject files and reject transactions. But there's nothing that the customer, as I can see, who is the website owner, being able to reverse that transaction manually. Chris, you could help me there?
Sure, yeah. There's a couple of ways that we can help there. So first is you can automate refunds through our API integration. So you can actually use one of the transaction sort of calls to actually perform a refund. And then secondly, we actually have what's called a merchant administration portal, which you get access to as one of FAC's clients. So which allows you to review all your transactions up to the second. So you can see how many authorizations or captures you did, how many refunds, and you can run very detailed reports, or you can run summary reports. But within that portal actually is the ability to manually perform a single refund. sort of one at a time, as it were, providing that you have, the original authorization number.
Authorization code.
You can actually go into that portal, and then, but importantly, with that portal and the merchant administration side of it, as a client, you can set up different permissions for people. So you might not want to give everybody the ability to perform refunds through that portal. You might just want, your CFO or your head of accounts to do it, or the business owner, and then everybody else just has view access to the reporting. But yes, it can be done through the portal.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have any more questions, but what I will do, from the audience, because I always have a lot of questions. For those who are, just joining us, and if you have any questions for Kwame or Chris, please let us know. We have 9 minutes to go. But what I would like from you guys is some insight into the e-commerce. What does this space, what would it look like in the next year or so? I would say 5 years, because we are in a transitional period where the adoption rate is extremely high due to the environment that we're living in. And I want to start with Kwame from Republic Bank side. What, if you were a futurist, and we assign that to your title right now, what would you say is going to be the evolution of e-commerce, and how can businesses be part of this transition?
Sure. E-commerce is here. What was tomorrow is now, and the future is upon us. Visa and MasterCard are directing some of these mandates as well. So even contactless, most of the banks in the region and the world will be going contactless soon. So I believe very, very soon we will be very digital. We will be connected. Most persons will have a digital wallet. Payments will be made using wearables. And the physical card, as in the US, is disappearing. It's not necessarily the case in Trinidad and the region, but before the pandemic, if you were spending a lot of time in the US, you would realize that card not present transactions is much more prevalent, or is becoming prevalent. Your Uber, your Lyft, your coupons, your digital payments. So all of these, the physical card is not present. There's a card on file, Google Pay, Apple Pay. So I believe the future has the e-commerce as its nucleus, and everything branching out from that: digital payments, online, the Internet of Things, wearables. And so the companies, the banks, the persons, the countries that are not best suited to adopt and to move with these technologies will be left behind. So there's no reason why we shouldn't adopt these things if we have the infrastructure, if we have the persons, if we have the capabilities within the country. So I believe generally within the next 5 to 10 years globally, there's going to be that big shift. And we are seeing some of the shift here. It's just that we are a bit lower on the adoption curve, but we are hoping to move up. But that's where the future is going to be: digital payments and card not present transactions replacing card present transactions.
So I'll have let Chris have the final word. But before I head over to him, I want to attest to what you just said there, because I was in China for a race that I did in October. And I will never forget being in IKEA, because during my time there, I was there for 4 weeks. My friend had to pay for everything because they don't accept card, they don't accept cash, which wasn't even something that I can get much of. But the experience I had in IKEA, where I handed the cashier the card and she looked at me and she was like, "What is this?" Mm-hmm. And it was so frustrating until she didn't even know what to do with it, because my friend, she lives there, she's from Canada, but she speaks Mandarin, so she's telling her, take the machine, because they have the machine, it's just they don't use it. And she's like, "You need to swipe." And she was like, she looked at it, she tried, but she still wasn't accustomed. It fell in the corner. She couldn't find it, basically, right? And it was such an interesting experience for me that I will never forget, because to them, it's all about the phone. The phone, this is all that matters.
Yes.
And it was like it was like stepping into the future. And what you're saying there basically supports that, because the environment with cash and so forth is just not something that they, just the side street. If you just somebody have just a chair and a table and they're selling something on the street, they pay by phone. So it's so interesting that the adoption has to be something that we have to look at. So Chris, I know you will have the last say, but I have two questions. I feel like we should answer them before we close off. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead.
Someone asked, and it's quite interesting that they asked this, because they were asking it while you were talking, Kwame, and they're asking Mark Smart, there any new methods, plans for payment outside of credit cards?
Okay. Well, we spoke of the debit card, so are there new methods planned for payments outside of credit cards? So, credit cards being as the main vehicle to facilitate the purchase, I guess that's what Mark is speaking about. There is now debit card. We will be moving to debit cards soon as a country for domestic e-commerce. So there will be, you can use your Links card now, which is we call a Visa debit card. The Links capability will be for local transactions, online as well as offline. So yes, there are plans for payments outside of credit cards, and there are prepaid cards and stored valued cards that can also be utilized for e-commerce, like our VTM card that has been discontinued, but there are stored valued cards and prepaid cards as well that can be used once
Okay.
available.
So another question. This will be the final question, and this would be for Chris, right? She said she may have missed it. Teresa Frigas. How does one get the First Atlantic API once they've attained their local merchant account with RBL?
Sure. So there's a couple of ways you can do it. One is you can go to our website. So in our resources tab at firstatlanticiccommerce.com, if you go to resources, you can actually download the integration documentation from there. But that is for review purposes really. But once your merchant account is approved, then RBO will actually put you in contact with us directly and provide us all those sort of merchant account details. And then we will reach out to you directly to set up the next steps. So the integration call and then working with you and your team to actually get the integration done into our platform.
Okay, I know I said that was the last question, but I really like this one. So I feel like, guys, why you ask these questions so late? Anyway, we'll go a little bit over time if that's okay with you guys, right?
Sure.
So this is a conversion question from Ethan. Ethan has a lot of questions here. How does the conversion work if the merchant account is in TT and the customer card is in USD or some other international currency? And how do chargeback fees work? Which is a quite broad question. So let's go with the first one, which is the conversion.
Right. So how does conversion work if the merchant account is in TT and the customer card is in USD? So it's basically the existing rates, the prevailing exchange rates between the currencies that will apply there. So currently, now some companies or some e-commerce merchants tend to have a markup, which we call dynamic currency conversion. So, for example, a Trinidad issued card will be Trinidad dollars purchasing on Amazon. However, you may see the option, do you want your bill in TT dollars? And if the existing exchange rate for easy maths is $1 US equals 6 TT dollars, then you're purchasing something for 100 US, you should be paying 600 TT. However, for dynamic currency conversion, there may be a small markup and you may pay $605. What you're going to see when you see your statement is $605 and not necessarily 100 US, right? So that's how the conversion work on your card that is single currency. To get a bit technical, Republic Bank has dual currency cards. So if you conduct a transaction that is outside of Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, or Grenada, or the US, or Canada, that transaction is reflected on your US side of the card, all right? Because it's outside of Trinidad. All of your Trinidad or domestic or local transactions will be reflected on the TT side. So this $600 example just now there, if you had done that transaction with Amazon, you would see that on $100 US on your US side of your account with Republic Bank. If you accepted dynamic currency conversion, where the merchant is saying, instead of this being 100 US on your statement, I can reflect this into your local currency, you will now see $605 on your TT side of the account. So that's how the conversion works, using the prevailing exchange rates between the two currencies. However, online merchants can give you your final bill in your home currency with a markup called dynamic currency conversion. Right?
So I think, Chris, you want to touch on how do the chargeback fees work? I know we did a blog on it. Ethan, you could check out firstatlanticcommerce.com/blog, but I will also let Chris elaborate there.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, this is probably more on the bank side. So we don't, we're not really involved in the chargebacks. So, and then for those that don't understand chargebacks, so chargebacks are when somebody is basically disputing a transaction that they made on your website or at the point of sale within your brick and mortar business. And the reason that there's a lot of security and sort of KYC, know your client, and anti-money laundering documentation with the banks is because chargebacks, somebody can charge back a transaction they did on your website for up to 180 days from the day of the original transaction. So you're sort of technically carrying that risk for 180 days. But we don't actually sort of initiate the chargeback or charge any fees for the chargeback per se. That's really directly between the merchant and the bank.
Yeah, but for the customer, Pauline, there is no charge for chargebacks. What the customer needs to do is, if they are disputing a transaction that may have appeared on their card, they immediately inform their bank, they fill out a dispute form, and the bank will ask for the transaction slip or details around that transaction, and go on a special portal that is between all of the banks and engage the particular merchant for details around that, as well as the acquiring bank. So if it's, for example, it's Amazon or I don't know, Barnes and Nobles, we will then get in contact with Barnes and Nobles and Barnes and Nobles acquiring bank to work out the details of the transaction and the dispute. But generally, there is no charge to the customer. If it is a valid chargeback where the customer was in fact defrauded, the customer will be made whole again, whereas they will get a new card with a new limit and their existing balances restored. If the customer is in fact culpable and did not and is in fact responsible for the fraud, then it is on the customer, and the transaction will be applied to the card accordingly.
From a business owner perspective, I can share an example, Ethan, where I have event in Barbados for the last 6 years, crop over, and part of our process when they paid online, because we were the first Juve morning, 40 morning band to actually transition online completely. And even though they paid online and we did email, because if folks would have picked up, as you do in Carnival, picked up something on behalf of somebody, you had to sign, because it was just proof of purchase as well as collection. And we had a request for chargeback, and we literally just showed them that signature, and we found out that that particular individual was known for fraud. So if we didn't have that evidence, we would have been liable to pay. And this was literally 2 months after crop over.
Wow.
So that's why it's important to make sure and have, due diligence, because we used to get a lot of complaints from customers. Why I need to sign for this? I already paid for this. And I'm like, nope. Sign. Thank goodness we did that, because then we would have had to pay a couple $100 US back to somebody who actually not only did they sign for it, but we had pictures of them having a good time. So,
Yeah.
going back to the final question, because we're going to close up now.
Yeah.
Kwame mentioned contactless payments. Chris, we're going to put the futurist role on you and give us some insight to where you see e-commerce in the next 5 years.
Yeah, thanks. So yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think we're absolutely moving towards a cashless society. Asia is certainly leading the way when it comes to that, and we are you're looking for ease and of purchase and ease of delivery and ease of access and ease of consumption of whatever it is, and so and contactless and e-commerce payments and card not present payments in general really is the way forward there. There has been a lot talked about cryptocurrencies, and they are it's an interesting payment method for sure. It's really I think what you see now is it's really being treated more as a commodity, as a sort of stock right now, and there's probably more regulation to come where it comes to that. But and we monitor very carefully because it's potentially very disruptive to what we do, and but in terms of merchant requests, I could probably count on one hand the amount of companies that have actually asked us to accept something like Bitcoin. So there isn't a lot of demand from a merchant perspective, which leads me to believe there isn't a lot of demand from their customers to actually be able to pay by cryptocurrency, certainly within our region. So it's difficult enough to get people to trust using a card, but to make that sort of almost quantum leap into a digital currency that a lot of people actually struggle to understand exactly how it works. I'm not sure we're going to get there, but ultimately for me, and I'm not the person, I don't want to stand in line at the bank. I don't want to go into the bank for anything. I want to use all online services. I want to use my phone for everything they do. But even an extension of that would be biometrics. So before COVID, one of my preferences would be if all technology was, from a payments perspective, was tied to a thumbprint or a retinal scan, for example. So I don't even need my phone in that case. So if my phone's out of battery, whatever, or if I'm roaming in different countries, I have something that's constantly with me that's tied to some sort of payment method that I can simply put my thumb on a payment terminal. But obviously contactless has become much more relevant now as we look to social distance, as we look, don't physically have access to stores. So a lot of work, we have a lot of work on the e-commerce side, but we also have products that are coming out for contactless payments and kiosk type payments, and that make it easy for people to socially distance, pay safely, whether whatever the scenario is, if we're in full lockdown, if we're in semi-lockdown, and this is not something that it's going to happen overnight. Especially within our region, it's going to take some time for full adoption. It's going to take some time for new generations to come in that are more comfortable with the technology. So I don't see it happening very quickly within the region. It's definitely the pace now is certainly a lot better than it was. I think the local debit cards being Visa enabled now, so in Trinidad and Jamaica is also following suit, will have a really significant impact in the local e-commerce industry, and again that will have a knock-on effect to people potentially looking for credit cards or other methods, card products that they can then use internationally. And as we are able hopefully again to travel more easily, the demand will be there for products that enable you to seamlessly purchase whether you're in your own country or you're traveling. So it is going to happen. Whether it would happen completely within 5 years, I would say it's probably going to take a little bit longer than that. Haven't seen the e-commerce landscape over the Caribbean over the last. I've been in this business for 17 years now. FAC for 20 plus. But the adoption over the last 4 or 5 months, has literally been, straight up curve. So it'll be very interesting to see how that potentially slows down over the next few months as we roll out to be more mobile. But everything that we're seeing and all the feedback that we're getting is people are much more comfortable with this online type of environment now, and I think there's no looking back, and we shouldn't look back, because this technology is here to make our lives easier and provide more opportunity for our economies to be able to grow. So I hope it's forward.
I going to agree on Ethan here, where he said this was a very informative session. My heart still flutters at the fact that debit Visa is going to be a thing.
Yeah.
Yes. Very soon as well. Very soon.
So excited for those who may have missed this and just recently joined. You missed an exclusive, go and rewind. You have to go rewind. And on that note, where can people, Kwame, find, let's say they want to go and start this process with e-commerce, where should they go?
So certainly, republictt.com. Normally, we would follow this up by saying visit any one of our 41 branches, but given the pandemic and given this is an e-commerce web session, republictt.com, and just under commercial, you will see the commercial tab, you will see e-commerce solutions.
And Chris, where would people go to find more about FAC?
So you can go to firstatlanticcommerce.com. Or fac.bm. Either will take you there. We have a very large resources section now, which has been designed over the last few weeks. So you can either there, or you can look us up on LinkedIn under First Atlantic Commerce. There's a lot of sort of good, sort of bite-size, consumable information on not just FAC but the e-commerce industry in general. So either of those methods are certainly the best way to get hold of us.
Yeah, and make sure to head over to the contact us section in the firstatlanticcommerce.com, and you'll be signed up for the email newsletter that happens once a week. So thank you so much for joining us, guys. Really appreciate your feedback, and stick around for the next episode of FAC Live. Make sure to follow us on LinkedIn, on Facebook. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Chris. Thanks, Pauline. Take care.